Welcome to Story Hour, a virtual meetup hosted by Wolf and Heron. Go ahead, Hilarie.
I went to a really rural, small state school in New York for my undergrad. And so in my senior year, I was a women and gender studies major, and I had already been there for 2 years, and I had lined everything up perfectly to receive this accolade that I was really excited about called Senior Scholar. And because it's such a small department, you really know who you're competing against, right? Because you know everyone, and you've been in these intense, tiny classes where you've gotten into every nook and cranny of like all of your preconceived ideas and all of your prejudices and all of your everything, right? We were so involved in each other's lives. And so, it almost felt like competing against my sisters at this point, right? Where we had that really tight kind of familial feeling. So I had my ducks in a row. And I tend to be very pragmatic when it comes to this stuff. I had checked all the boxes, right? I had gone so far above and beyond that I knew I was getting this. I was senior scholar. I was senior scholar, right? And everybody else thought so too. And so one day, the head of the department calls me into her office, and she has a huge smile on her face. And she's this very small, like mild-mannered woman. But she has this capacity to go on these intense, passionate rants on occasion. So I know when I see her smiling and happy that there's another side to the coin as well. So I go in and she's smiling, and I'm like, this is it. This is the moment, right? She's calling me in. She's going to tell me I got it. And so I sit down and I'm feeling expectant, right? I'm like all tingly, waiting for her to say what I know is true, right? Hilarie, you're senior scholar. So she sits down at her desk. She rolls her sleeves up, and she sort of settles in, and she goes, Hilarie, I'm really thrilled to offer you senior scholar. And, you could just feel like all those tingles just exploded, right? I had done it. I had checked the boxes, and it paid off. And what I knew was absolutely true, right? Like there was that piece of my identity that's the achiever that was just like so satisfied and affirmed in that moment, right? And so I'm thankful, and we chat for a minute, and I'm like vibrating. I'm so excited, right? And I have visions in my head of the award ceremony and having my parents there and having my actual sister there and being able to be like, look at what I did, right? Because she is so accomplished. So we're sitting there and we're chatting, and it's this lovely casual conversation while I'm basking in the glory of this, right? And I hear an email come through on her computer. And she glances over and clicks it as we're still talking. And she then, leans forward for a minute, and, that moment where someone's focus turns from you to something else, and you can feel that sort of palpable shift. So she got engrossed in that email. And so I stopped talking for a minute and just let her read. And she drops her head down, and she lifts her head back up, and she looks at me and she says, and she pauses. And I was like, did something happened to her child? Like, I know her family. Is her husband okay? Right? Like, I have all these thoughts of like, oh my God, did I just like witness some like personal tragedy occur? She looks at me and she goes, I have really bad news. And I was like, oh my God, right? Like, what is she going to tell me just happened? She goes, unfortunately, we are going to have to give senior scholar to the person with the highest GPA. And you have a 3.99 and someone has a 4.0. we're going to have to give senior scholar to her. I'm so incredibly sorry. I had no idea that it was going to come to this, and she starts apologizing, right? I never would have told you if I'd known, blah, 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 blah. Right. And so there was a moment where I had to like reel in the processing of that. Right. And I sort of walked out of her office like a zombie. And it took me about 6 months to get over that. And I've noticed ever since then, right, there have been moments in my life where I could choose to wrap my identity in an accolade, right, in an award, in achieving something. And then there's that moment where I'm like, or it could come down to GPA, right? So where does my energy need to go here, right? Where does my focus need to go? And where's my identity centered? That's not on an award, right? That's not on something external. So that has rippled through my life ever since.
Yay, Hilarie! I can't believe that was the very first time you ever told that story.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Fantastic job. Okay, so what did Hilarie do well? What did you find compelling or well done about the story? Go ahead, Milo.
We recorded that, Hilarie. So I suggest you take that, add some music to it, because that, I don't know if you're going to be able to reproduce that. That was like I can tell you right now, from the moment, like in the beginning, I actually wrote down, I was having a hard time connecting. And my entire comment was going to be about how do you connect with your audience? That literally what I wrote. And then you started kind of talking about that moment of rejection. And from where you said, she turned to me and she said, I, and you stopped talking, which dropped the audience. There was like, we all were just like, okay. But like that distance you gave really made the rest of it flow. And then you just opened up and it was straight from your heart. Like I could tell this was the first, you've been trying to tell this to somebody to help us understand that moment, to share it. And you did it, you nailed it. It's 100%. I don't know, like honestly, like take the recording and just play it from now, put it on your website and just, make it a profile or something. Ideal. I loved it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Like the same similar comments, like it was amazing, like literally amazing. And I could connect to the story from the start to the end. I could actually feel what you were feeling. The things that I liked the most was the voice modulation that you used and the breaks that you took. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Hilarie, one of the things that I very often tell people about is to zero in on a moment and go deep. And what I think you did extremely well was this moment of approaching the office, being in the office, having the conversation, getting that news, right? I mean, that probably all happened in 15 minutes. And yet you were able to really, really dig into the details, the anticipation, the experience of it, the basking in the glory of it, and then the reeling from the experiences. Like that moment, that 15-minute moment is in a lot of ways the trigger point for your before and after, right? And whenever we talk about storytelling, we always say, find that moment that defines where the before ends and where the after starts. And you did a really good job of finding that moment and then leaning into it with everything you had, right? And so that made it very easy for us to connect, and it makes it very easy for us then, when you have your kind of like, well, this is the after effects, right? It took me 6 months to get over it, and now this is how I live my life. Like you can go and wrap up 3 years of your life, or however, I don't know how long it's been since then, but you can wrap that up in 5 seconds, in 5 sentences, because you spent time in that moment. And that's really powerful. Thanks. Molly.
Gosh, I just love +1 to everybody else, but I love that. I thought your word choice was so deliberate and like purposeful. So like vibrating, expectant, affirmed, like the way you said them, but also just those words in particular, I don't know, just felt really like on point for what the message you were expressing. I loved how you brought back, like you said, it felt like you were competing with your sisters, and then you brought your actual sister into the mix. That was like a really interesting like tie that I don't know if you did that off the cuff, but that was really amazing. And then like when you hung the rejection, like I was just waiting for you to get there, but like you hung it, you like dangled the carrot. You were like, at that point we knew it was coming, but like you just really leaned into like letting it sit there and like marinate for a little while. And like, I felt that so deeply. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's so much power in pause because it's what allows your audience to feel, right? Like the audience needs to catch up. And so when you pause, it gives the audience the time to kind of be like, oh God, right? And you paused like 17 times that made us just kind of like live in this with you in a way that was really effective. What about, okay, go ahead, Lynn.
Oh yeah, no, at one point your voice got so quiet and I was like, what is she saying? Like it was good. It was sort of the ebb and flow of your voice getting a little louder and then kind of coming in, because I can imagine at that moment you're like, what happened? Did something happen? You know what I mean? Like, did she get bad news? And, almost as if you were thinking it in your head. So when it comes out to tell the story, you're saying a little quieter. I don't know. I thought that was engaging me into figuring it out. And I also like the fact that you didn't just say, and I didn't get it. I got rejected. You know what I mean? You gave all the detail of, well, it was the GPA and not even just GPA, but yours is 3.99 and hers is 4. Like, what?
What about opportunities for experimentation? We are at time, so we'll go rapid fire here. Any thoughts? Go ahead, Kara.
You did that extemporaneously very well, so I'm going to give you some advanced skills to work on the next time you do something extemporaneously, which is your filler words, which is hard to do without real prep, but you relied on and, right, and so several times throughout as transition words. And so because I'm not thinking about it, when you tell a story, try to then not say anything instead of saying those words. And I also recognize some of it from how you chat with your friends, right? So I would just think about, you probably still want a little of it to have it feel very natural, but perhaps a little less. The other thing I would think about is that you are very smiley and genuine when you're speaking, very warm and kind energy. And there are probably moments in the story when that's not actually what you want to reflect. But because you've personally moved past it and you're not really bearing the weight of this anymore, you don't feel that. But I would think about, how do you want to change your own energy within the story when you're at those heavier moments?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, extra advanced skills would to actually have your eyes like well up, right?
Oh, I can do that.
Lynn, you had a thought.
Just one thought, actually, when you were talking about, she looked at her email and she said, and then you said she paused. And I guess that part I don't need to know. Like, it's evident that she paused because you paused. Okay. So by saying she paused, I don't know, it didn't, I can't think of what I'm trying to say, but.
Yeah, we often talk about dialogue and the delivery of dialogue and what makes sense. Do you want to describe the dialogue or do you want to actually embody it? Right. And so I think what you're suggesting, Lynn, is that it's worth experimenting with, literally become this professor and just say what she said and act how she acted. And you don't have to fill in the words around this is what she said and this is what she did. Milo.
I just noticed that the books behind you are in a spectrum.
Yes, they are. And
that kind of tells me a lot more. I thought you were more of a quiet person, but I'm discovering now a lot more about this entire story. I just wanted to again say, I really liked the character voices you did. I didn't realize that until somebody else made that comment, but I just realized that there was multiple characters in this story, and you played both of them back to back with different voices, and it worked really well. So I'm I don't know. I think that you should really take this story and like find out how you could draw upon this in order to apply it to other stories, because they're not going to have that kind of emotional connection. So I don't know if it's going to work out in the future. So you really have to, like, you know, figure out how to draw upon that power of connection.
Well, thank you all for hanging on. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Come again. We always love it.
Visit wolfandheron.com to find out more about our story hours.